Welcome back to the show. Back to tell you about some other things happening in the city of Ottawa. There's always something going on, and really pleased to see that they have combined these two wonderful shows. It is the Ottawa Vintage and Antique Market, and they're combining that with the Ottawa Vintage Clothing Show happening at the Fieldhouse at Carleton University this weekend. Here to tell us more about it, I'm joined by Kyla Ubbink, Book Conservator and Exhibitors. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Derek.
I want to start off with your role, Book Conservator. I think a lot of people at home hear that and like, I'm not really familiar with what that is. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
I get asked this question all the time. It's a rather unique job. I take old items that are maybe family treasures or in museums and archives and basically give them a whole new life. So my specialty is books and paper. So fine art, prints, drawings, sketches, old maps, vintage movie posters, old family Bibles like the one here. They're falling apart, they're ripped, they're torn, they're yellow, they're discolored, they've got stains in them, and I give them a whole new life. So clean things up, repair it, put it back together, while still keeping it looking old and as an antique without making, take away its character and just make it look totally brand new again.
So Kyla, what makes something antique then?
It's a great question. In Canada, it's actually 75 years old is what makes something an antique.
Okay.
As opposed to something that's vintage. So vintage would be from like the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, sometimes even the 90s.
Goodness.
I know it makes me feel old. That is considered vintage now.
Okay, so you and I are vintage now. Is that what you're saying?
That's a lovely term, isn't it? We're vintage. We're
Actually,
vintage.
I think it's a good word.
Yes.
Let's talk about the market and the clothing show in general, though, before we talk about some of the things you brought along here. What can people expect at both shows?
A huge variety of stuff. It's one of the reasons I love that show, because there's anything there from folk art, mid-century furniture, the much older antiques from 1700s. There's books there. Obviously, lots of vintage clothing, very cool stuff from all different eras. And that's what I love about that show. There's just huge variety, and the exhibitors are extremely knowledgeable about the items they're bringing. And
extremely excited, right?
Yes.
I mean, you've been on a 3-year hiatus, so one of the reasons you're bringing both back and to really celebrate antique and vintage. Let's talk about what you brought along with you here today. Where do you want to start?
Well, so I brought a couple of examples to illustrate the work that I do.
Okay.
So, here's an example of a fine art print. So this is actually a print from 1831. The one on this side is the original from 1831. The one on the other side is just a facsimile of what it looked like beforehand, where it's got all this blotchy yellow staining to it, and it was quite deteriorated. So through the treatment process, I can actually get rid of all of that yellow blotchy staining, make it look beautiful again. And I did actually hand color this piece, something that was traditionally done, and I get to show a lot of skills in one little tiny display
no
here.
kidding. That's very cool. What have we got in front of you here? These are some of the tools of the trade here?
Some of the tools of the trade. You might recognize some of them from your dentist's office, but we don't need to be afraid of them. They're great, handy tools to use. And the book here is Jonathan Swift from 1750. And just to show that when a book is actually totally falling apart, like this one, covers are detached, things
really
are torn,
poor shape.
It's been well read, that I can actually put back together again and made to look quite nice.
It's amazing.
Function really well, because that's the thing about books, right? We use books. We handle them, so they come apart, they fall apart, so they need to be good and strong and function again and bring everything back together. Of course, the spine I had to recreate altogether because the spine is so badly deteriorated that's just fallen pieces. So this is a complete recreation on the spine.
It's amazing, and it's amazing how well it blends. I mean, it really does look like the original spine.
Yeah, that blends quite nicely. So in keeping the character and to keep all the original components, because if you start just discarding the original components, you don't have anything of the real artifact left anymore. So just putting a brand new binding on it takes away from its integrity, right? Takes away from its authenticity.
So something that's caught my attention, and I'm certain our viewers probably caught their attention, is you brought some baking soda with you here. What is the purpose of the baking soda? And there's a lot of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any books that smell? Ever have a library of dusty
some older
old
books? Yeah,
and they
absolutely.
People ask me all the time, how do you get rid of old book smell? And baking soda is the answer. But I'm going to ask people, please do not just sprinkle baking soda through the pages.
Okay.
Because what will happen is the baking soda will mix with moisture in the paper and create carbolic acid, and that's going to eat away at the paper. You're actually doing more harm than good.
Okay.
So I'm going to show everybody the trick for
All
getting rid
right.
of old book smell. You need a container, plastic container. Any kind of a grid. You could actually use drying racks that you dry cookies on for
of course.
baking.
Yeah.
These are plastic grids from lighting, so you can get these at a hardware store.
Right.
And you want to do the honors?
So just gonna pour it in
a
here?
whole ton in there.
A whole
just
ton,
dump it
okay.
a ton. You want like a good half-inch thick of baking soda in there. Yeah, that'll be
good?
perfect,
Okay.
Derek. Awesome.
All right.
So we're going to set our racks on top.
Yeah.
We're going to take one of the old books
Sure.
here. You want to open up the old book because you want that to air, so you're going to set it in there opened.
Okay.
We're going to stick a lid on there. And now you have to have a lot of patience.
You're not telling me this is it.
This is it.
So
but
I'm just
patience.
leaving.
You leave it for a month,
Okay.
and you come back and you see how it's doing. You might have to change the baking soda, but a month is usually enough time for the baking soda to actually absorb all of those odors out of the book.
That is
and
fascinating.
if it's a really, really stinky book, it might take a little bit more than that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah.
I want to jump over to this because I found this so cute here, and I apologize I'm getting
Oh.
into your camera view here, but I'm just going to turn this. What have you got here? These like little mini books? Do you make
Yes.
these yourself?
I make these myself. So although my profession is doing the restoration conservation, I had to learn how to bind books in order to be able to fix books. And I was approached by the Ottawa Miniatures Club at one point to see if I could come give them a workshop. And so they challenged me to make a miniature book. And I did them the same way that a big book is done.
Very
So
cool.
the frame in behind, the sewing frame that you see here, this is actually a special miniature sewing frame for hand sewing these books on. The leathers are all real leathers, the gold tooling on the spine of the book
That is so cool.
is all real gold leaf on them. They are abridged editions.
Okay.
So there's actual text in there. You might need a magnifying
Absolutely
glass.
amazing.
Just saying.
Kyla,
yes.
thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Want to
All right.
remind everyone it's happening at the Field House at Carleton University, October 22nd, 10 to 5, October 23rd, 10 to 4. We'll be right back after this.